This happened back when I was in 8th grade. I was just a regular kid, decent grades, a solid friend group, and I mostly kept to myself. But that year, there was this one kid named Ryan, and for some reason, Ryan hated me. I never really understood why. He wasn't part of my friend group, and we barely spoke. But anytime we crossed paths, he'd throw in some snide remark or give me this look, like he was just waiting for a reason to start something. I ignored him for the most part, but one day, a friend told me something that changed everything. "Dude, Ryan was talking about you. He said you ruined his life." Ruined his life? I had no idea what that meant. I barely even knew the guy. But apparently, he was telling people I was fake and two-faced. That made me furious. I wasn't going to let someone spread lies about me. So after class, I confronted him. I walked right up to him in the hallway. "What's your problem with me?" He barely looked at me and just smirked. "You know exactly what you did." I had no clue what he was talking about. We argued. Things got heated. Friends had to step in before it turned into a full-blown fight. After that, I told myself I was done. If Ryan wanted to be weird and hate me for no reason, that was his problem. Then, a few days later, I got a text, a random number. "Hey, it's Ryan. Let's talk. Meet me in the North Hall bathroom during 5th hour. Just 5 minutes. I stared at my phone. Something about it felt off. But then I thought, maybe he wanted to apologize. Maybe he realized this whole thing was dumb. And honestly, I didn't want to deal with the drama anymore either. So, I texted back. All right, 5th hour came. I got my bathroom pass and started walking toward the North Hall. That bathroom was kind of out of the way, down a hallway that most students didn't use much. It was quiet, almost too quiet. I was maybe halfway there when suddenly, a noise blasted over the school intercom. At first, I didn't even register what it was. Then I saw a teacher up ahead step out of their classroom, looking confused. Then her expression changed. She looked at me, eyes wide. "Come here, now." I hurried into her classroom. She shut the door behind me and locked it. "We're in a lockdown." My stomach dropped. A lockdown? I sat there in silence, my mind racing. After about 10 minutes, the lockdown was lifted. It was fast, too fast. Something felt off. I made it back to my classroom, still confused. I barely sat down before. There was a knock at the door. It was the principal. She looked straight at me. "Come with me." I followed her down the hallway in silence. My heart was pounding. We turned a corner, and I saw them. Police officers. 4 of them. I froze. What was going on? The principal led me into her office and shut the door. She took a deep breath. "Do you know why we had a lockdown?" I shook my head. She gave me a long look. Then she said something that sent chills down my spine. It was because of Ryan. Ryan, apparently, right around the time he texted me, a teacher had seen him walking down the hallway, carrying something suspicious. It looked like a weapon. The teacher immediately reported it, and the school went into lockdown. And the place he was heading? The North Hall bathroom. The exact place he told me to meet him. I felt my stomach twist. I could have been in there, alone, with him. What was he planning? The principal kept talking, but I could barely focus. Ryan had been caught. The police searched his backpack and found something. I never found out exactly what. Some students said it was a knife. Others said it was something worse. But the scariest part? When they asked him where he was going, he said my name. I felt sick. All those weird glares. The way he seemed to hate me for no reason. He'd been planning something, and I had almost walked right into it. I sat there in shock as the principal reassured me that I was safe. That Ryan wouldn't be coming back to school. I nodded, but the whole time, I just kept thinking, if that lockdown had happened just a few minutes later, I might not be here to tell this story. Every school has that one day that no one forgets. For us, it was the day the fire alarm went on. But there was no fire. It started like any normal Tuesday. I had just gotten to my second period class when the fire alarm blared through the speakers. Everyone groaned. We had just done a drill last week. My teacher, rolling her eyes, waved us towards the door. We lined up and shuffled out, laughing and chatting like usual. But something felt off. Normally, the principal would be outside with the other staff, clipboard in hand, counting heads. This time, she was nowhere to be seen. The teachers exchanged glances. We all stood on the grass outside, waiting for the usual all-clear signal. 5 minutes passed, then 10, then 15. That's when we heard it, a scream. from inside the building. It wasn't loud, but it was sharp, enough to make the teachers stop mid-conversation, enough to make every student turn their heads towards the school. Then, another sound. Footsteps, running footsteps. One of the side doors to the gym suddenly slammed open. A janitor burst out, panting, his face pale. He ran straight to one of the teachers, whispering something. I saw my teacher's face go white. Everyone, back inside. Now, back inside? That was the opposite of what we were supposed to do in a fire drill. But the teachers weren't giving us a choice. We were rushed into the cafeteria, doors locked behind us. No one explained what was going on. Phones weren't allowed at school, so we had no way of checking the news or calling our parents. The whispers started spreading like wildfire. What if it's a shooter? No, we'd be in a lockdown, not a fire drill. But what if? The cafeteria doors suddenly flew open. A police officer stormed in, radio in hand. That's when I knew something was seriously wrong. 30 minutes passed, then an hour. Cops kept coming in and out, whispering among themselves. The teachers avoided our questions. Some students were crying. Finally, the principal stepped onto the stage, grabbing the microphone. Her voice was calm, but her hands were shaking. Students, there was a false alarm triggered in the science wing. However, we also discovered an individual in the building who should not have been here. Silence. They have been removed by law enforcement. You are all safe. Safe. But we never got an answer about who it was. A week later, rumors were flying. Some said it was a former student. Others said it was a teacher's ex who had snuck in through a side door. The truth? We never found out. The school never talked about it again. But no one forgot that fire alarm that wasn't a fire drill, and the lockdown that followed. This happened in my school last year, and I still can't shake the feeling. It was a normal Friday, until it wasn't. I was half asleep in my first period class, struggling to keep my eyes open as my classmates shuffled into their seats. The usual hum of early morning chatter filled the room, and the smell of coffee lingered in the air. Our teacher, Mr. Reynolds, was usually the first one in, already setting up his laptop and preparing for the day's lesson. But today, something was different. The classroom door creaked open, and instead of Mr. Reynolds, a tall, thin man with pale skin and deep-set eyes walked in. His presence sucked the air out of the room. He moved stiffly, almost unnaturally, like he wasn't used to his own body. Without a word, he turned to the whiteboard and wrote, "Mr. G." Then, in a voice so low it was almost a whisper, he said, "Phones away." No talking. That was it. No introduction. No roll call. Just those 4 words. We all exchanged confused glances. Substitute teachers were usually relaxed, cracking jokes or giving us a free period. But this guy, he was different. His eyes scanned the room slowly, as if memorizing each of our faces. Something about him made my skin crawl. The room fell into a suffocating silence. 10 minutes passed, then 20. Still, nothing. No lesson, no instructions. Just him, standing there, watching us. My friend Mia, sitting beside me, nudged my arm and whispered, "This is so weird." Before I could respond, he did something even weirder. Without warning, Mr. G walked to the door, locked it, and turned off the lights. The room plunged into darkness, only faintly illuminated by the cloudy daylight seeping through the windows. A nervous chuckle came from the back of the room. What are we doing?" someone asked hesitantly. Mr. G didn't answer. He just moved to the corner of the room, shrouded in shadows, his face barely visible. My heart began to race. The air felt heavier, like the walls were closing in. Then, the intercom crackled to life. "Attention, students. We are now going into a lockdown." My stomach dropped. This wasn't a drill. I exchanged a panicked glance with Mia. We had practiced lockdown drills plenty of times, but they were always announced beforehand. This time, there had been no warning, no heads up from the principal. I realized something else, something that sent a cold wave of fear down my spine. The lights were already off. The door was already locked. It was like he knew it was coming. My breathing became shallow. I reached for my phone, but before I could grab it, Mr. G's voice cut through the silence. No phones. His tone was eerily calm, almost unnatural. It sent a shiver through me. Minutes passed, each one stretching into eternity. Then, footsteps. Slow, heavy, coming down the hallway. We all held our breath. A shadow passed by the small window on the door. A tall figure, standing still, watching. My pulse pounded in my ears. Then, bang, bang, bang. The classroom door shook violently. Someone was trying to get in. Mia gasped, clamping a hand over her mouth. A few desks over, I saw someone trembling, their eyes wide with fear. Mr. G didn't move, didn't react. He simply raised a finger to his lips, signaling us to stay silent. The handle jiggled. Whoever was outside was testing it, trying to get in. My chest tightened. I wanted to believe this was part of the drill, but something deep inside me screamed that it wasn't. Then, the person outside laughed. A slow, raspy chuckle. The sound was wrong, distorted, like whoever was out there was enjoying this. Then the footsteps faded. Silence. Complete, suffocating silence. We sat there, frozen, for what felt like hours. Finally, the intercom crackled again. All clear. I exhaled shakily, my entire body trembling. A few students began whispering, the tension in the room still thick and suffocating. Then, without a word, Mr. G walked to the door, unlocked it, and turned the lights back on. His expression was unreadable as he grabbed his bag and walked out. Just like that, as if nothing had happened. Mia and I exchanged another look. Something wasn't right. After school, a group of us went straight to the office to ask about the substitute teacher. But when we got there, the secretary looked confused. "What substitute?" she asked. I felt my stomach turn. Mr. G. He was in Mr. Reynolds' class today. She frowned. Mr. Reynolds called in sick this morning, but we never assigned a substitute. My blood ran cold. That wasn't possible. He had been there, in our classroom, all day. Mia pulled out her phone and checked the school's online sublist. Nothing. No record of a Mr. G anywhere. Maybe he was a last-minute hire, someone suggested weakly. But the secretary shook her head. That's not how it works. All substitutes are logged into our system. Silence hung between us. If the school didn't send him, then who was he? And more importantly, how did he know about the lockdown before it happened? That night, I lay in bed, replaying everything in my head. The silence, the locked door, the way he stood there, watching us, the laughter outside. Something wasn't adding up. The next morning, I texted Mia. Hey, did you sleep? I can't stop thinking about it. Mia, barely. I looked up school records last night. There's no Mr. G. I know. It's freaking me out. Mia, I think we should check the security cameras. My stomach twisted. I wasn't sure I wanted to see what they captured. On Monday, we convinced a janitor we were working on a class project and needed to review the hallway footage from Friday. He hesitated, but eventually let us watch. We fast-forwarded to first period. The classroom door opened, and we saw our class entering. But then, my breath caught in my throat. The video showed the door closing, but no one had entered before it. No Mr. G, no substitute, no one at all. It was like he had never existed. Mia's hand clamped over her mouth. "That's impossible," she whispered. We sat there, staring at the screen, unable to make sense of what we were seeing. Mr. G had been real. We saw him. We heard him. But according to the cameras, he was never there. We never got an answer. No one could explain what happened that day. No one could explain who or what Mr. G was. But I still have nightmares about the laugh outside that door.